Hi guys, so let's now take a look at another means by which authorities can actually reduce negative production externalities, and this is through a marketable pollution permit scheme. Now this provides firms with the legal right to pollute as long as they actually possess the necessary permits to actually do so. So here you're going to allocate firms permits which enable them to legally pollute, and any unused permits can actually be resold by those firms to other firms on an open market system. Now that means that you will actually determine a level of output for pollution and for your level of emissions which is going to be socially optimal, or so the theory would suggest to us. So if we just consider the way in which that would actually look, here we have our marginal benefit curve, and this would be the marginal social benefit equals the marginal private benefit. So meanwhile we would also have, of course, our marginal social cost here, and therefore as a direct consequence of such a policy we can see that pollution permits would be limited to this level, and let's just label that Q star. So we can see at Q star that is the level of pollution permits that we would actually want to enforce within the marketplace and allow to be traded. Okay, therefore you can see that we will not go beyond that position, and thus there is no means by which companies should be actually producing excess output and contributing to more emissions. Okay, so therefore we can see the level of pollution permits will restrict pollution to the point where the marginal social cost equals the marginal benefit, and that's really important. Okay, there's a number of advantages to such a scheme, and that firstly is that it helps to incentivize firms to actually produce low emissions so that they produce low levels of pollution, and that's of course good news because they know that they can actually sell any unused permits back to other firms on the market system. Moreover, we can also see that this may actually encourage firms to engage in innovation, research and development in looking at other means by which they can become cleaner and greener in terms of their energy. We can also argue perhaps that there's the potential for greater dynamic efficiency as well because of this incentive to actually profit from the resale of these permits. Then again, that may help to boost your supernormal profits, and if you are encouraging greater innovation, greater research and development, cleaner energy overall, that may help to bring your costs down, and thus, yes, there may be a greater potential for dynamic efficiency to occur. Right, so we can also see, as our last point here, that polluting firms need to buy more permits, and therefore those polluting firms will actually be paying more to the pollution that they are actually generating. So that's another excellent point that we can see here. Now, the downsides, however, and there are a number here. Firstly, that we know there's imperfect information, so authorities don't truly know where this level actually is, where this socially optimal level actually is. So we do not know that for sure, so that's certainly worthwhile noting. Moreover, we can also see that there's the cost of actually setting up and managing and monitoring this system, as well as the costs involved in enforcement and enforcement difficulties that may actually occur in ensuring that all firms are actually legally cooperating with this obligation. Then, when it comes to countries that are right next door to each other, there's also the need for bilateral or even multilateral agreements to actually be settled. So bilateral simply meaning between two different countries, okay, but then when it comes to multilateral, you're looking at many different countries there, of course. So it can be difficult to agree such levels, particularly when you have certain people in power that may not be in favour of cleaner, greener energy and so on. So the last point that I've put down here is really the fact that you may end up concentrating pollution in particular areas, in very specific localities, and that can of course cause all sorts of problems for those areas. Okay, now there is of course another diagram that you could use within this model as well, and that really reflects the situation facing the firm and the level of pollution permits that are actually available. So let's just take a look at that. If we draw out the price and quantity, here we're dealing with the price of the pollution permits themselves and the quantity of permits, of course, that are actually available. So if we still work on the premise of that socially optimal level of pollution permits, which is fixed at, let's just refer to that as Q star there, we can see we have that point. Now imagine the actual level of demand for pollution permits. Well, we can see what the sort of free market price is likely to be in such an outcome. So there we go at P1. Now what's also interesting about this is how this supply of permits may actually be restricted in future years. So as we move to cleaner, greener energy, of course authorities may actually want to reduce the supply and further incentivize firms to make sure that they are not polluting. And therefore by doing so you can see the impact of this really does restrict the actual level of emissions that can be carried out, as well as increase the price for those polluting firms. It also of course incentivizes these firms that are actively really ensuring that they are clean in terms of the energy and the output that they are producing. So it's a very, very interesting model. Because the integration of the market, it is often seen as quite a favourite way of dealing with these negative production externalities. However, it can become very, very complex when you need to actually consider international agreements. Okay, there we go guys. I hope that's been useful. See you next time.